Hey, Morgan Hughes. What's up, brother?
Pete McGinty, how are you, my friend?
Good to see you.
Good to be
Hey,
seen.
yeah, I've told a lot of people this, and I've told you this too. That when we first met, um, I had heard about the Save the Crew movement. I may have occasionally heard the name Morgan Hughes, and I knew not much more than that in terms of how this whole thing came together. And over the course of us talking more and more and more over more and more beer and more occasions and so forth, I started learning about people like Zadar and Darby and Donnie and Andrew and you name it, right? The
Yep.
list goes on to 19 whole people. And it was absolutely amazing to me I mean, you could say, well, let's just get 19 buds in a room and drink. Okay. But that's not at all what this was. This was 19 individuals who all brought a unique skill set that was all necessary. There was nobody who was on the Save the Crew team superfluously. I mean, everybody worked. Everyone had a skill set. That's how you assembled the team. I think it's absolutely remarkable looking back that what I consider to be the instinct you had immediately, let's say for those first couple weeks when you started assembling this gang, knowing you needed a leadership team because there were hundreds of people wanting to help, certainly with the best intentions, and knowing that you needed a small group of leaders who all did something very unique that without any one of them, you would have been much lesser. It's just amazing to me.
You know, I've talked to Nate Beckman about this hundreds of times, I feel like, but maybe we even talk about it in the book, but I know we do. We talk about it in the book. Everything that had happened to us, through us as crew fans, led us to the moment perfectly. You know, whether it was Tifo Sweat or supporter groups or Nordic Leadership or Aces Radio or various podcasts. Working together was in our DNA by that point. So when Save the Crew started, it was just second nature to kind of say, all right, who are the people that, you know, I'm used to working with that are good, that are trustworthy, that follow up, that really get the job done. Let's get in a room. Yeah. And once that room, and you know, let's be honest, there were people in that room, first couple meetings that didn't stick around because this was hard work, man. Like this was all day, every day for a year, and not everyone's cut out for that. Mm-hmm. God bless them. They did other things to help Save the Crew for sure. And once that room kind of became its tight, cohesive unit, we recognized talents in other people and kind of made them come into the room. Keith and Tim and Tobias and David Miller. We knew that, we needed people who were good at what they did. And there was no ego. We were always willing to get stronger and be better because we owed it to our community. That's what Save the Crew is all about.
Yeah, I think talking to people like you mentioned, David Miller and Tobias, I mean, just to name those two, they both said that they kind of found a way to contact somebody. I think maybe they ended up going through Darby or whomever, simply saying, hey, I've got a skill set that maybe you guys can use. Right? I mean, it was really simple as that. You may need this help in this area, and I think I can help you.
You know, it was so interesting from an organizational structure perspective. David Miller specifically, I didn't know what I didn't know about handling media and communications. And he came in and it was kind of a moment where you go, oh, I'm real shit at this thing that he does that I'm trying to do. He's so much better at it than I am. I need to do everything I can to give this off to him and just get out of his way and let him do what he does. I think that, there's so many times where people want to get involved with something and they go, I want to get involved. What can I do? And they're like, write letters or, put together yard signs. Well, what if they're illiterate and what if they don't have arms? I think, of course that's a joke, but
sure.
The right answer is, what are you good at? If someone goes, I want to get involved. Well, what are you good at? What's your skill set? And we'll fit you in where where that skill set can be best utilized. And that's what Save the Crew did really, really well.
Yeah, I really doubt that unless people read the book, until they read the book, the people understand you had two researchers in Keith and Tim Myers, right? Two lawyers,
Yep.
Andrew and Steve. I mean, no one would imagine that you'd have that kind of, degree of depth in those areas, and community relations, media relations, design, web design, graphic design, spokesperson, yourself, and everybody did, like people have said, no one else could have done what Morgan did. I mean, that is, in fact, I think it was Tom Davis who really created the website and handled the web work. He told me after the rally, he said he didn't know to what degree he'd get involved, but he said I saw that Morgan got there, and I thought, that's a good-looking guy, articulate. He's got to be our spokesperson. It was just the natural. That's the natural flow where you went. But you also are a control freak. You've said that many times to me, and you had to let go of a lot of things too. I mean, to give partial skill sets you had over to people like you said, David Miller, right? That were simply better and more equipped at doing certain things.
Yeah, I tell you, Save the Crew changed my my personality, I guess, or at least the way I live my life. I'm not nearly as big a control freak as I used to be, and Save the Crew has a lot to do with that, and I couldn't be more thankful. Listen, we were coming out of a time in crew stuff where, I did a lot of heavy lifting. Nobody really knows what goes into making like a 90-foot piece of art and getting it approved and sewing it together and tracing it and painting it and letting it dry and fixing it to a stadium and making sure the front office is like, it's a whole damn thing. And I was handling that with Tifo Sweat, and, I was running Nora on tour, and I was just doing a lot of stuff by myself that I probably didn't need to do by myself, but, I was such a control freak that I'm like, I need to be controlling everything. And Save the Crew just illuminated, how absurdly dumb that was. And I wasn't even the best control freak, man. Like, Zadar's way better of a control freak than I am. I mean, maybe not bigger, but he's definitely better.
Yeah. Slack channels. And
again, like I said before, man, it's just like, if you want to be successful, if you want to have a successful organization, you need to take your ego and put it somewhere where you can't access it. Because if you walk into that place and you aren't able to rationalize that you might not be the best at something, you're going to fail. And you're not going to have the people who are best equipped to handle that situation in charge of that situation. I mean, God, if I was in charge of making the Save the Crew logo, do you know what it would look like? Not nearly as good.
Do you have any renderings of, yeah. And you said Zadar just sketched that out, and you said, that's it, burn your pencil, that's it, we're done.
Yeah, I muted the phone. It was just he and I in that front room at Endeavor. We were on a conference call that first week, and he drew it, and I muted the phone, and I said, set that pencil on fire, dude. That's the logo.
But because you were the front man and the spokesperson, a lot of people thought that you were it, right? Or they thought that you were the main guy, it's the Morgan show and so forth. And, part of that perception came with the territory of those who didn't know any better. But how do you balance that? You talked about putting your ego on the shelf and so forth. But you were the Save the Crew. You were iconic in terms of that, right? And all these other people back there doing lots of other work too. But did you feel like you were getting undue credit, undue blame, undue attention? And how do you handle that?
Maybe not an undue attention, but undue credit. Yeah, it was, that was something I was consistently thinking about.
Was it to make you feel uncomfortable, or was it?
Yeah. Uncomfortable and it's an unwarranted adulation. It's, for instance, one of the hundreds of times I was in front of a camera being interviewed by media, they would always start with, when you get interviewed by like a TV station, this is what they do. They go, they mic you up and they go, okay, say and spell your complete name, Morgan Hughes, MorganHughes. What is your title? And they would sometimes go, you're the leader of Save the Crew, right? You're the Save the Crew guy, right? Or, they would just kind of go like, you are Save the Crew. And I would have to say, no, I'm just part of the machine. I'm the spokesperson. So yeah, I was always concentrated on and mindful of the fact that like this wasn't my show. It wasn't about me. And I needed to, dude, this is one of the reasons why I was so excited that a book was being written, because I tweeted this in the middle of Save the Crew at the beginning, middle, and end. Someday the story is going to be told and everyone will realize just how much this wasn't me, and just how many people were involved. Yeah, I was always going to get a lot of credit, a lot of blame, no matter what happened, how it turned out. And I'm so happy that now everyone's going to know that it wasn't my show. It wasn't even close, man. It wasn't even close.
Yeah,
I could talk about that for like an hour. Just like the people involved in this were so good. They were so talented. And I think that my role as spokesperson was not just to, communicate information to the media, but it was also on a big level to make sure that I let everyone know how many people were involved, how good they were at what they do, and how committed to it they were.
When I started meeting the other folks, some of them, when I asked like, how do you want this book to capture things? And a couple of them said, I want you to make sure you reflect that it was 19 of us, that we all played an equal and significant role. And that was something I worked very hard to do, and I hope I did it. But I knew I also had to figure out a way to explain the fact that your name was going to be in here more than anybody else's by far, and you were going to be quoted more than anybody else by far. And you were, probably going to be looked upon as the leader to some degree, and so I wanted to kind of hit that right up front. So in the prologue, I said, this is the story about the Save the Crew leadership team. I said the team's inspirational spokesperson and most visible leader, Morgan Hughes, is the primary narrator of the story, but behind Morgan were experts in areas such as yada, yada, yada. Each had equal standing on the team, played significant roles, though many assumed Hughes was the leader of the gang. That wasn't the case. He took frequent ribbing from his fellow teammates about his visible role, while in truth, the work by so many others that went unnoticed was what drove the engine. And when I wrote that, I even was sensitive to the fact that, God, I wonder if Morgan's going to be pissed that I said they were the ones that drove the engine. But it was my way of making sure that whoever was going to read the book knew that, it was all of you, and everyone had a gear and everyone had so I really wanted to kind of set the table right up front and do that. So people knew that even though I'm going to read Morgan said this, Morgan said that, he's capturing the story for everybody. And obviously I was inclusive of everybody else too, but it was something I worked on and struggled with. And
I couldn't appreciate it more, Pete. And I'm so happy you included in the book that little part about how, when we were building the site out and when we were scaling it, we made sure that Tom wrote code in it so that when you went to the leadership team, it randomized it for every visitor. Every time you could refresh that page a billion times and never get the same lineup.
Yeah.
It was Sarah first. Sometimes it was Kelly first. Sometimes it was Donnie first. It was Robbie first. It was me first. It was John. We all kind of like switched. I actually have screenshots from the night when he was testing that out, and we kind of like we were going to the website to see if it was working. It was like a Friday night, and it was like the randomized source code that he put in there was taking half of people's like heads from like here up and putting it on other people's heads. So sometimes it would say like, Sarah Hall, Mark Vucinic, Tobias Redinger, and it would be all of their faces from here down, but the tops up would be Zadar's head. Just like every time you refreshed it, it was some new combination of randomized fuckery. And I think I sat and laughed until I peed a little bit. And, like, again, that's another story. Like Tom spent an entire like Friday night. He was probably up till like 3 a.m. making sure that it was that important to us. It wasn't important to me. It was important to the entire team that no one was looked upon as above someone else. And again, it was our jobs to, and we're just talking about the leadership team, man, the volunteers, of which we were part of as well, but the volunteer did the heavy lifting. You
Yeah.
know, they were at tents at you know, Taco Fest. You know, they were the ones that collected all of the soccer supplies and school supplies when we did our drives. They were the ones that came to City Hall. They were the ones that wrote emails and, you know.
Yeah. In telling people about writing the book, you know, somebody would say to me, "Oh, you must know so and so," because they were right there. They were involved, and I'm like, I don't know, they weren't.
Exactly.
Without being insulting, I'm like, well, they weren't part of the quote unquote leadership team, and
They
you
were
know,
right there, but you know,
yeah, yeah,
this is a testament to how many people were
yeah.
driven by this movement.
And people who knew them knew how vested they were in helping to save the team. So they just assumed that, well, you must know so and so because they were right there every step of the way, right?
I get the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're part of the same crew. Do you know, like, Joe McGillicuddy? He was like huge in the movement. I'm like, I'm sure he was. I have no idea who he is though.
Right. You know, it's funny you talked about the web page of the leadership team, because I know when I went to it for the first time after we started talking and so forth, I was surprised that your picture wasn't upper left-hand corner. You know, I had to like, where's Morgan and why? I thought, wait a minute, I thought, you know, it's just funny. Whose idea was that?
The first time I went to it, once it was up and working, I was the first at the top.
You were like, no.
Oh, bitch.
Whose idea was it to randomize it like that?
Well, that's a good question. That would have been somebody's.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
You know, and we talk about
I did very quickly once it was raised that everyone was like, yes, 100%. Even if that's not possible, it needs to happen.
you've got to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Even if we have to build a new site every week with, yeah. You know, we talk in the book a lot about new power and old power and how new power is flat and new power is not hierarchical. And, you know, old power, you know, the old traditional way of doing things is very hierarchical, and it's, you know, there's a ladder and so forth, and there's a protocol, and new power is we're all of equal weight, right? So you got 19 of you and you were all of equal standing and so forth, which is reflected better than ever. I mean, that's the best metaphor for that is how the that leadership page came to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, also, you know, the whole new power, old power thing is this new phenomenon, especially with a fellow named Henry Timms, who wrote the book, The New Power, and all the work Doug Kreidler's done around that. But you didn't know what new power and old power were when you started this, right?
I wouldn't, you know, I didn't know those terms for sure. You know, as far as I was concerned, I knew that, you know, we as consumers have the ultimate power, and that's whether or not we spend our money on your business. And, you know, which was of course the original thing that Save the Crew was going to be, was a way to make sure that these advertisers were aware that we wouldn't buy their product if they sponsored MLS.
Yeah.
They destroyed the crew. I guess I technically knew what old power was, but only from a perspective of like, I wasn't interested in ever interacting with that.
From the perspective of I despise old power.
Yeah.
It's not my game.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, yeah, it's not me, right? You are not, yeah. Yeah.
In the book where you were talking about that, and you're like, you know, sometimes when we were talking and doing these interviews for the book, you would leave and I would go, I said that on the record, huh? Fuck. And one of them ended up in the book, and it was kind of like me talking a little bit of shit about Steve Lyons and Doug Kreidler or
Alex.
Steve Lyons and Alex Fisher.
Yeah.
When I was getting ready to go to that first meeting with them,
yeah.
And I was just, you know, I was kind of like, fuck these guys, because I had no idea who they were. And, you know, yeah. I hope when they read the book, they understand that, like, I was, my thoughts were irrational, and I'm here to tell you that, like, those are good dudes. Those are people that are on our side, and I was wrong to want to destroy them.
Well, I remember so well you talking about walking into that meeting, and as you recall, I had to pull my most favorite Morgan quote from the book, which was, we won't even say it in full now, but it was something like, I walked into that meeting angrier than a werewolf with a chainsaw for a something, right?
Like a werewolf with a chainsaw for a penis, yeah.
Well, there you go. I'll let you say it. And I initially put that on the book. And I think
Did your editor make you take it out?
No, I mean,
What?
I think a lot of people made me take because remember when we the first I think the first draft had something like 57 Morgan F bombs in it, right? And
It had like 62 instances of all of the worst possible words, and like
yeah,
59 of them were me.
yeah,
And just people quoting me.
yeah, there's that too. And so it's fun to do a word search and like just search the word fuck, and it's like three on this page, and then you came over there one day and we did a final you know kind of word search for the bad words,
I
and
kind of like
and you were like, well, I guess leave that one in. That's good. But take that one out, and I guess that one's okay.
it's tough, man. It's tough when you. I swear a lot. It's part of my vernacular, and
You're an expressive dude.
I don't regret it, man. I just like I know that my grandmother's gonna read this, and she hates when I swear, even though her husband was the one who taught me how to speak like this.
Well, we wouldn't have been we'd have been disingenuous to take them all out.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be a PG book. It doesn't. That's not anything we even thought about. We wanted to appropriately reflect the story and so forth. But that does bring up let me see if I can find it real quick, because I know it was the first page you flipped to when you opened the book when I gave it to you last week. Let's see if I can find it. You know what I'm going for, right?
Yeah, it was when I showed Pam this copy of this book. My wife, she flipped to that immediately as well.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, that was your first tweet after your first expression after the Grant Wall tweet, and after everyone was pinging you with, I mean, are you kidding me? Well, fuck.
That was like that first night, man. That was before going to Headbox. That was before talking to Chris Doran. That was before getting mad and getting organized. That was it.
That was it. All right. Thank you, Morgan.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you down the road.
Go Crew.
Thanks, man.